I only read one book, but it's a good book, don't you know? I act the way I act because the good book tells me so. If I want to know how to be good, it's to the good book that I go. Because the good book is a book, and it is good, and it's a book.
Now, Sarah, Abram's wife, bare him no children, and she had an handmaid, an Egyptian whose name was Hagar, who did wear a helmet with horns, and did frequently get drunk, and was horrible. And Sarah said unto Abram, Behold now, the Lord hath restrained me from bearing, for it is most likely that as you and I art half brother and sister, any children that we have would be mutants, with webbed fingers, 3 legs, and 2 heads. Or worse still, they may even be ginger. I pray thee, go in unto my maid, and go know something that you are not related to. It may be that I may obtain children by her. And Abram hearkened to the voice of Sarah, for he did know not to look a gift horse in the mouth, and it was not bloody likely that she was going to repeat the offer for him to get to know the staff. And Sarah, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her maid, the Egyptian, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife, which was such a generous thing to do, considering that in the Bronze Age society that Abram lived, which was preoccupied by male dominance to the point that women are not really even mentioned, let alone listened to, and that it should be her idea that Abram should have a second wife and not Abram's, or that she would have any say in the matter at all. And he went in, and presumably back out and then back in again, and so on, unto Hagar. And she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress Sarai was despised in her eyes, with Hagar pointing out that Sarai couldn't do anything for herself, and that she had to do everything for her, including have her kids. And Sarah said unto Abram, in a loud screeching voice that left her out of breath, while throwing crockery, pots, pans, and anything else that came to hand in Abram's general direction, My wrong be upon thee, because when it comes to women, it's always the husband's fault. That's just a fact of life, as true in Abram's days as it will be for centuries to come. I have given my maid into thy bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. And it's all your fault. It has nothing to do with me giving her to you, or me letting you marry her, or me agreeing to you getting to know her, or the fact that I am barren. No, it's all your fault. The Lord's judge between me and thee, and a great unbearable silence did descend upon Abram's tent, that lasted for a great many weeks. And the Lord did see the great wrath upon Sarai, and the mess that Abram's cock had got Abram into, and did say, I art staying out of this one. But Abram said to Sarah, Behold, thy maid is in thine hand. Do to her as it pleaseth thee, for you will. Anyway, just stop her throwing stuff at me and screeching. And when Sarah dealt hardly with her, a mighty catfight did take place, with great chunks of hair being ripped out on both sides, much scratching from either, and both women losing most of their clothing, and she fled from her face. And the angel of the Lord found her by a fountain of water in the wilderness. Presumably because God, who knows everything and is everywhere, told the angel where to look, which was by the fountain on the way to Shur. And he said, Hagar, the most horrible, Sarah's maid, whence comest thou, and whither wilt thou go? And she said, I flee from the face of my mistress Sarai, because she is a right bitch, and I hate her, and she doth be a right slapper, and look what she hath done to my dress. It was new and all, and was from Topshop, and not from TK Maxx and Primark, where she buys all her tatty stuff. And now mine maketh it buggered up, and I hath broken several of my nails, and lost an earring, and those weren't cheap. And the angel of the Lord, who was sorry that he had asked, rolled his eyes and muttered something to himself under his breath. and did say unto her, Return to thy mistress, and submit thyself under her hands, for though your mistress can dish it out, but not take it, that is irrelevant. You shouldeth know your place as a servant, the lowest of the low, with the status of a slave, who art probably here illegally anyway, and do as you are told, for thou art on dodgy ground, and she need only tell immigration, and the law wouldeth come down and pick you up, and booteth you back over the border into that shithole of a country from whence thy came. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, I will multiply thy seed exceedingly, that it shall not be numbered for multitude, for all foreigners do always have a pile of kids, so that they can leech us off state benefits and get sympathy upon when they are finally to be deported, which was either a promise that she will have many descendants made by a duly appointed representative of the Lord, or it was a good indication to Hagar that if she didn't clear off back home real quick to receive her horsewhipping and like it, she was probably going to get raped. And the angel of the Lord said unto her, Behold, thou art with child, and shalt bear a son, which was probably a 50-50 guess that would never have been mentioned if it had been wrong, and shalt call his name Ishmael, because the Lord hath heard of thy affliction, which is something that doesn't really need to be pointed out, considering that God, who knows everything and is everywhere, has probably heard everything. And he will be a wild man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him. And he shall dwell in the presence of all his brethren, which means that he will be a bit of a handful, and will have no end of problems with the law, thus explaining why in years to come it will be okay for him and his descendants to be looked upon as troublemakers, being that they will have brown skin, and it will therefore be justified that they get a good kicking once every so often. And she said the name of the Lord that spake unto her, even though it was, as previously stated, only a few verses ago, actually an angel, and not the Lord. Thou God seest me. For she said, Have I here also looked after him that seeth me? And the angel of the Lord did say, No, I art but an angel of the Lord, as thou art but a slave, and a female one at that, so thou art in no way important enough to warrant a personal appearance. Thou shouldest be thankful that the Lord doth send me at all, for if the child that thou do bear was the child of any other man other than Abram, thou would be getting this message by text, in the form of a fruit with seeds inside, arranged into the word Allah. Wherefore the well was called Bir Lahal Roy, which is almost unpronounceable in English, and means well of the living one who sees me, something that has to be explained to the English-speaking people who read the King James Version of the Bible, and makes you wonder why the people who wrote the King James Version of the Bible didn't translate this particular word when they were translating all of the others. And behold, it was between Kadesh and Bered. And Hagar bare Abram a son. And Abram called his son's name, which Hagar bare, Ishmael, as the angel of the Lord had instructed Hagar to tell him to do. And Abram was 86 years old, knocking on death's door with the rubber end of his walking stick, when Hagar bare Ishmael to Abram. And Abram did go out that night with his many drinking buddies to wet the newborn baby's head. And he did get exceedingly drunk, and whereupon he did finally make his way home, stopping off at a late-night altar on the way, so, like many others in years to come, he could give thanks to the Lord and pick up a kebab. He did come loudly crashing through the tent flaps, with a road code under one arm, and a goat wearing a policeman's helmet under the other, chanting, "Who's the daddy?" at the top of his lungs. And he did realize that now that he had 2 wives, the seed that he had was not the only thing that was greatly multiplied. For the shit that he was now in, the ear-bending that he was now about to receive for coming home blind drunk, was now exceedingly doubled also, and he would spend the night sleeping on the sofa.